Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The gunshot didn't kill the silence, it shattered the world. Blood bloomed across the white marble floor like a grotesque poppy, but Dante Vanzini didn't look at the man he had just executed. He didn't care about the corpse cooling at his feet or the terrified whimpers of the rival cartel members zip-tied against the wall. His obsidian eyes were fixed on a single, torn piece of fabric clutched in the dead man's hand, a strip of pale blue silk that smelled of rain, vanilla, and terrified distress. Dante inhaled, and the beast inside his chest, the one he had starved and chained for 3 agonizing years, roared to life with a hunger that promised annihilation. They hadn't just stolen a civilian. They had touched the only thing in this godforsaken city that belonged to the devil himself. Dante Vanzini was not a man who believed in fate. As the capo of the Vanzini syndicate, he believed in leverage, ballistics, and the absolute power of fear. He ruled the underworld of the Neo-Verona district with a cold detachment that terrified his subordinates and paralyzed his enemies. He was an alpha of the highest order, dominant, suffocatingly powerful, and utterly devoid of mercy. Or at least, he had been, until Julian. 3 years ago, Julian had vanished. He was a rare male omega, a pianist with fingers that could coax weeping melodies from ivory keys and a spirit that was both fragile and fiercely stubborn. He had been Dante's secret, his sanctuary, until the day Julian left a note on the bedside table saying, "I love you too much to let you die for me," and disappeared into the fog of the city. Dante had torn the city apart looking for him. He had burned down warehouses, tortured informants, and spent a fortune on private investigators. But Julian had used high-grade suppressants to mask his scent, disappearing like a ghost. Dante had eventually stopped the manic searching, settling into a cold, hard depression that made him even more ruthless. But tonight, fate had intervened with cruel irony. The Vanzini syndicate had intercepted a human trafficking shipment from the Kovacs Bratva, a rival Russian faction encroaching on the eastern docks. Dante had come personally to inspect the merchandise and execute the traffickers, a grim duty he usually delegated. But when the doors of the container opened, the scent hit him. It wasn't just the smell of fear. It was lotus and rain, a scent that haunted his dreams. One of the Kovacs lieutenants, the man now lying dead on the floor, had laughed when they opened the truck. "We found a pretty one hiding in a music school," the Russian had sneered, waving the strip of blue silk. "Feisty. Bit me when I grabbed his neck." That was the last sentence the Russian ever spoke. Dante holstered his custom suppression-silenced pistol and turned to his second-in-command, Lucas. The air in the warehouse grew heavy, the pressure of Dante's pheromones dropping the temperature by 10 degrees. It was the scent of ozone and burnt cedar, the smell of a storm about to level a city. "Lucas." Dante's voice was a low rumble, vibrating in the chests of everyone present. "Clear the room. Leave one alive." Lucas, a beta who had served Dante for a decade, went pale. "Boss, I need to know where they took the rest of the shipment," Dante said, unbuttoning his suit jacket and rolling up his pristine white sleeves, revealing the intricate ink of serpents winding down his forearms. "Specifically, the one they took to the VIP auction." "We have protocols, Dante," Lucas warned, though he was already signaling the men to leave. "If we hit the Kovacs main hub, it's war. The High Council will sanction us." Dante looked at Lucas, his eyes glowing with a feral, crimson hue that only surfaced when an alpha was pushed to the brink of insanity. "Let them sanction ashes," Dante whispered. They took Julian. The Kovac stronghold was a fortress masquerading as a brutalist nightclub called the Foundry. It was a place of loud bass, cheap drugs, and expensive flesh. In the penthouse office, separated from the thumping bass by soundproof glass, Victor Kovacs sat behind a mahogany desk. He was a massive man, an alpha with a scent like rotting pine and gasoline. Before him, on a velvet chaise usually reserved for willing lovers, sat Julian. Julian looked nothing like the radiant creature Dante remembered. His clothes, a simple sweater and slacks, were torn. His lip was split, a stark line of red against his pale skin. His wrists were bound with zip ties, chafing the delicate skin, and he was trembling. Not from cold, but from the overwhelming, nauseating pressure of Victor's aggressive pheromones. "You are a rare thing," Victor mused, swirling a glass of amber whiskey. He stood up and walked toward Julian, his heavy boots thudding on the floor. "A male Omega who hasn't been marked. Do you know how much a corrupt senator would pay for a night with you?" Julian lifted his chin. His eyes, the color of stormy seas, were filled with tears, but his gaze was defiant. "If you touch me," Julian rasped, his voice damaged from screaming, "he will kill you. He will burn this entire building down with you inside." Victor laughed, a wet, ugly sound. "Who? The little piano teacher you were hiding with? Or perhaps some imaginary knight?" He reached out, his thick fingers tracing the line of Julian's jaw. Julian flinched, turning his head away. "You don't understand," Julian whispered, a tear finally escaping and tracking through the dust on his cheek. "I didn't leave him because I stopped loving him. I left because he would destroy the world for me. And you just gave him a target." Victor grabbed Julian's chin, forcing him to look up. "Well, let him come. I'll add his head to my collection." Victor leaned in, intending to scent the gland on Julian's neck, a violation so intimate it was considered worse than physical assault in their world. Julian squeezed his eyes shut, holding his breath, praying for a miracle he didn't deserve. Boom. The heavy steel doors of the penthouse didn't open, they imploded. A concussive blast blew the hinges off the frame, sending the heavy metal skidding across the floor. Smoke billowed into the room, thick and choking. Victor spun around, reaching for the gold-plated Desert Eagle on his desk, but he was too slow. Through the smoke stepped a figure that looked less like a man and more like a reaper carved from shadows. Dante walked through the debris, an assault rifle in one hand and a combat knife in the other. He wasn't rushing. He was stalking. Behind him, the hallway was littered with the bodies of Victor's elite guards. Dante had not used stealth. He had walked in the front door and killed everything that stood between him and the elevators. "Victor!" Dante's voice cut through the ringing in everyone's ears. It was calm, terrifyingly conversational. "You have something of mine." Victor raised his gun, but his hand was shaking. The sheer density of Dante's alpha aura was crushing. It triggered a primal, biological fear response that overrode logic. "Vancini? This? For a whore?" Dante didn't blink. He raised the rifle and fired a single shot. Victor screamed as his hand, the one holding the gun, evaporated in a spray of red mist. The Russian collapsed to his knees, clutching the stump of his wrist. Dante tossed the rifle aside. He didn't need it anymore. He needed to feel this. He needed to tear the threat apart with his own hands. He crossed the room in 3 long strides. Victor tried to crawl away, but Dante stomped on his calf, shattering the bone with a sickening crunch. Victor held. "He is not a whore," Dante said, his voice dropping to a demonic growl as he leaned over the sobbing Russian boss. He grabbed Victor by the throat and lifted him off the ground with one hand, slamming him against the reinforced glass window. "He is my soul. And you touched him." "Mercy," Victor choked out, his face turning purple. "I am out of mercy," Dante said. "I used the last of it letting you live this long." With a savage twist of his hips, Dante threw Victor. Not to the floor, but through the glass. The window shattered, raining shards of diamond-like glass down onto the crowded street 30 stories below. Victor's scream faded into the night air, abruptly silenced by the pavement. The wind howled through the broken window, whipping Dante's coat around his legs. For a moment, he stood there, silhouetted against the neon lights of the city, a king of ruins. Then, the monster vanished, and the man returned. Dante turned slowly toward the chaise. Julian was curled into a ball, shaking violently. The pheromones in the room were chaotic: aggression, bloodlust, fear. Dante immediately clamped down on his aura, pulling the aggression back until he was nothing but a wall of protective warmth. "Julian," he whispered. Julian flinched at his name. He looked up, his eyes wide and unfocused. He looked like a bird with a broken wing. Dante approached him slowly, hands raised to show he was empty-handed. He knelt before the chaise, heedless of the glass shards digging into his expensive trousers. "Jules," Dante said softly. "It's me. It's Dante. You came." Julian stammered, his voice breaking. I thought you'd hate me. For leaving." "Hate you?" Dante reached out, his hand hovering near Julian's face, asking for permission. When Julian leaned into the touch, pressing his cheek against Dante's bloodstained palm, Dante felt his heart restart for the first time in 3 years. I tried to hate you. I really did. But my soul is too stupid to listen to my brain. Dante produced a small knife from his boot. Julian didn't flinch this time. He watched as Dante carefully, surgically cut the zip ties binding his wrists. As soon as his hands were free, Julian threw himself forward, wrapping his arms around Dante's neck and burying his face in the crook of the alpha's shoulder. I'm sorry, Julian sobbed, the dam finally breaking. They found me. I tried to hide. I'm sorry. Dante wrapped his arms around Julian's waist, pulling him off the chaise and into his lap. He crushed the smaller man against him, needing to feel the solidity of his ribs, the beat of his heart. He buried his nose in Julian's hair, inhaling deeply. Underneath the smell of the warehouse and the fear, the lotus was still there. Hush, Dante murmured, rocking him gently. You don't apologize. Not to me. Never to me. I left to protect you, Julian cried. Because being your weakness. It makes you vulnerable. Dante pulled back slightly, framing Julian's face with both hands. He used his thumbs to wipe away the blood and tears. Look at me, Dante commanded gently. Julian met his gaze. The red glow in Dante's eyes had faded to a deep, warm mahogany. You are not my weakness, Julian. You are the only reason I haven't let the darkness eat me alive. Without you, I am just a butcher. With you, I am a king. Dante glanced at the bruising on Julian's neck where Victor had grabbed him. His jaw tightened. Did he mark you? Dante asked, his voice tight. No, Julian whispered. He tried. But you came. Good, Dante said. He stood up, lifting Julian effortlessly into his arms, bridal style. Julian weighed nothing. He had lost weight. Dante made a mental note to feed him the finest risottos in Italy until he was healthy again. We're going home. You're home, Julian asked, resting his head on Dante's chest. Our home, Dante corrected. I never changed the codes. I never moved your piano. It's exactly how you left it. Except for the dust. As they walked toward the elevator, stepping over the wreckage of the night, Julian tightened his grip on Dante's coat. Dante. Yes, amore. You started a war tonight. Dante stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for the lobby. He looked down at the man in his arms, the only thing that mattered in a universe of chaos. Let them come, Dante said, pressing a kiss to Julian's forehead as the doors closed, sealing them away from the carnage. I'll burn the whole world down if they try to take you again. The elevator descended, carrying the Alpha and his Omega away from the blood and into the night. The war had begun, but for the first time in years, Dante Vanzini had already won the only prize that mattered. And that is how the Viper tamed the wolf. If you enjoyed seeing Dante burn the world for his love, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you forgive a lover who left you for 3 years to protect you? Or is that a betrayal of trust? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then, prompt image. Prompt, masterpiece, best quality, high-res, 1.2. Korean manhwa style, semi-realistic, digital art, 2 men, BL, yaoi, man 1. Dante, alpha, tall, muscular, wearing unbuttoned bloody white dress shirt and black suit trousers, slicked back dark hair, intense protective expression, glowing red eyes, carrying man 2 bridal style. Man 2. Julian, Omega, smaller frame, pale skin, messy light brown hair, wearing torn oversized sweater, bruises on neck, clinging to man 1, head on chest, teary eyes. Background is shattered penthouse office, broken glass on floor, city skyline at night through broken window, dramatic moody lighting, flying debris, cinematic composition, sharp focus, intricate details.